Hello, this is Spellsquire's MTG, and today I'm doing a deck tech on my Korvold Fae-cursed King deck. I have had a Korvold deck for a while. I didn't have one up until recently, but I'd had one for about a year or so before that. So Korvold is 2 black, red, and a green. He's a 4/4 legendary creature, Dragon Noble. He has flying, and whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, uh, sacrifice another permanent. So this deck wants to be sacrificing a lot of stuff. Whenever you sacrifice a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on him and draw a card. This is definitely one of the most popular commanders in Commander in general. Uh, it's had a lot of builds to it. I think it's like 7th or something, most popular commanders. That's because it is very good at recovering from board wipes. Uh, also pretty fast if you build it properly. First up, we have our ramp category. First up, we've got Soul Ring, cost 1, taps for 2. Then we have creatures which have ramp on them. Leonard Visionary isn't as good. It's 2 and a green. When it enters, draw a card, tap it for green, and it's a 2/2. This you can sacrifice if you need to. When Korvold comes down, we have other better cards. Security Tribal, 2 mana, 1/1. Sacrifice to get land on the battlefield. Again, if we have Korvold out, we're going to draw a card. So anything which says sacrifice on it is going to be great in this deck. Dockside Extortionist is by far one of the best cards in the deck. This you can recur over and over again to get loads and loads of treasures. Each of those treasures you sacrifice, you'll draw a card. And in the early game, this can just ramp us. Either early on in the game, it's probably not as worth to play unless you know you can recur it. Solemn Simulacrum, 4 mana. Enter such life for a basic land card on the battlefield tapped. And when it dies, you draw a card. So this benefits us when we end up sacrificing it, and it ramps us as well. Commander All-Star. Then we have Springbloom Druid, 2 and a green. Enters, sacrifice a land. So we're going to draw a card of Korvold there if we have him out. Or if we're ramping, we can then sacrifice into Korvold when he comes down because you have to sacrifice something to him, which is a vital part of this deck. Instead of having to sacrifice a land and getting behind, I always find having to sacrificing an irrelevant creature is the right way to go. So when it enters, sacrifice a land, and then you search it for 2 basic lands. So it's a Harrow, but the land enters tapped and it's on a creature. Wood Elves, when it enters, search for a forest card, put it into battlefield, and then shuffle your library. Again, this can be sacrificed to Korvold when you need it, and it ramps us by 1. Same with Farhaven Elf, except it's any basic land on the battlefield tapped. County Heart Expedition, we're going to be playing. There's quite a few fetch lands in this deck, cheap ones, and this, whenever a land enters, it gets a counter, and when you remove 3 of them, you get to sacrifice it and return to search your library for 2 basic land cards, put on the battlefield tapped. So this, we draw a card with Korvold and it ramps us as well. Not particularly a ramp card there, but it works very well with Korvold. Harrow, 2 and a green. Sacrifice the land, get 2 on the battlefield untapped. With Korvold out, this draws us a card, otherwise it's just ramp. Search tomorrow. 1 green, suspend. You're only going to be paying the 2 and a green. But if you do end up paying it, it's not the worst rate. Search away for a basic land card and put on the battlefield and shuffle your library. This allows you to play stuff before Korvold comes down, instead of having a creature to put down instead, which ramps you. Either way works, and then 2 mana ramp and growth, search over for a basic land card, put on the battlefield, tapped, and shuffle your library. This gives you time to play a 4 mana creature on turn 3, and then Korvold out on turn 4. Getting Korvold out on turn 4 is vital because you're going to want to be swinging as soon as possible. And if you're going to want to be swinging with Korvold, you want to have something to sacrifice. So this is where our tokens come in. So the first lot of tokens we have are just stuff which we have in a deck just to be sacrificed. So first up we have 1 black, 1/1. When it dies, create X tapped 1/1 green scroll tokens, where X is its power. This one, we've got very few ways to pump up creatures, but we do. Otherwise it's just a 1/1, which gives us a 1/1 when it dies. And scrolls are cool. We do have 3 cards which care about scrolls in this deck, and this is one of them. Overall, it's just a very good card to play on turn 1. And then sacrifice on turn 4 when we attack with Korvold. Impulsive Pilferer, 1 red. When it dies, create a treasure token. It's a 1/1. Again, this doesn't mind being sacrificed to Korvold, and then we can encore it for 4, which will draw us 3 cards when we have to sacrifice them. And we'll also get 3 treasure tokens. So that is also a very good card. 2 mana, 1/1, Elvish Visionary enters, draw a card. Again, another card that can be sacrificed to Korvold. Very efficient card. It replaces itself. Scroll Sanctuary. 1 green mana. When it enters, create a 1/1 green scroll token. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you may repay 1. If you do, return it to his hand. This one we can just get scroll tokens over and over again. It's sort of a token engine sort of card. Then we have our token engines. So we have Dreadhorde Invasion, 2 mana, being of your upkeep, a lose 1 life and a mass 1. This, we get a token every single turn, or we get, if we keep the token around, it gets bigger and bigger. But if I were you, I'd sacrifice the zombie, so you keep getting something to sacrifice every turn. Bottom half doesn't matter so much. If you have a Bitter Blossom, put Bitter Blossom in here, because that card is far better than this one, but I don't want to spend 50 quid or whatever it is on it, as I already have that card. 2 and a red, Krenko, Tin Street, Kingpin. Whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then create another 1/1 red goblin token to equal its power. This one we can swing with before Korvold comes out with. Make tokens, and if you do manage, probably can attack on turn 3 or 4 if you're lucky enough. And then you get the tokens to sacrifice to Korvold. And it might possibly get big enough to start swinging later on in the game. As after it gets to 4 power and 5 toughness, people are less likely to have a blocker for it, which can kill it. This is a Voice of Zendikar, 1 double green, +1, put 0 plant creature on the battlefield. Every turn we can do that. -2, put +1/+1 counter on each creature control, not as relevant. The Nessus Shambler cares about powers. This is one of the ways you can pump it, and also the -7 doesn't care about. We mainly care about the +1. However, if we can, any of the other abilities help us, they are very helpful. Next, we have the cards which create tokens when they enter the battlefield. So first up, we have a Zoni 1000-eyed, 2 double black, double green. When it enters, create a 1/1 black and green insect token for each creature card in your graveyard. Because we're sacrificing a lot of creatures, we're going to amass a lot of creature cards in our graveyard. So if we get a lot of creatures, if we have to sacrifice a lot of creatures, we can use this, play this, recur it over and over again, make a lot of tokens with it, and flood the board with tokens so we can sacrifice them all to sacrifice outlets, etc., drain our opponents and win the game. These cards here are ways we can win. Less so Chittering Witch, as that only makes 3 tokens usually when it enters. And Deep Forest Hermit makes 4. So both of these are ways we can win by recurring them over and over again, draining our opponents. So both pretty good cards there. Right, next up we have our card draw category. In this sort of deck, we're going to want to have enough cards in hand. Less so with this commander, because he draws a lot of cards himself, but if he gets removed, then these are vital. First up, we have Smothering Abomination. This is 2 double black, flying, being of Valkyrie, sacrifice a creature. So it's basically another Korvold. When it's you sacrifice a creature, draw a card. So as we're going to sacrifice a lot of creatures, this card is especially good. Always good to have a bit of redundancy as well. If Korvold does get removed, then we can play this instead. And it acts as sort of like a worse Korvold, but it still works pretty well in this deck. 1 mana, Skull Clamp. Quick creature gets +1/-1. We have a lot of 1 power tokens and creatures in this deck. 2 equip Skull Clamp 2. When that creature dies, you of course draw 2 cards, and its equip costs 1. So you pay 1 often to just draw 2 cards. Harmonize, 4 mana, draw 3 cards. Simple. Village Rites, 1 black. As additional cost is spell, sacrifice creature, draw 2. If we have Korvold out, it's 3 cards. Always another good card. 2 mana, Night's Whisper, draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. And we also have Silent Blood, which does exactly the same thing, just a different mana cost. Both those cards are incredibly good draw spells. Next up, we have Removal. We don't have a way to deal with our opponent's stuff, so we can get Korvold through, Krenko through if we need to. So first up, we have our 3 mana instant spells. We have Beast Within, 3 mana, destroy target opponent. Its controller makes a 3/3 beast, and then Chaos Warp. Journey of target opponent shuffles it into their library, then reveals top card of their library. It's a permanent card they have on the battlefield. This one, we get rid of any permanent that is instant speed, and they get something as compensation for it, although which will often be worse than what they had before. Shriekmaw, we don't really care about paying 5 mana for it. 2 mana Evoke. When you cast this spell for its evoke cost, if you do it, sacrifice it into the battlefield, and when it enters, destroy target non-artifact, non-back creature. So it's 2 mana, sacrifice it, we get card draw Korvold, so it replaces itself. Incredibly good card in this sort of deck. Artifact Mutation, red and a green, destroy target artifact, it can't be regenerated and create X 1/1 green sapling creature tokens, where X artifacts convert to mana cost. This creates us more tokens for blowing something up, and it's also only costs 2 mana. Foundation Breaker, 2 mana Evoke again. When it enters, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Again, this will be sacrificed to Korvold, as it's slightly cheaper than the Shriekmore, and we can just evoke it and end up drawing a card anyway. So either works. Next we have Reclamation Sage, 3 mana, enters, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Can also be a sacrifice to Korvold, and then cast down, destroy target non-legendary creature. Instant speed, creature removal, cheap. Next we have our sacrifice outlets. So we mentioned before that we're making tokens and draining our opponents, but we want a way to sacrifice them at any time. And anyway, sacrifice outlets are instant speed ones, are especially helpful against exile removal, because if someone targets our creature, we can sacrifice it, and instead of it going to exile, it goes in our graveyard, so we can recur it later on if we need to. So the first card is Carrion Feeder, 1 black, it can't block, and then sacrifice a creature, put +1/+1 counter on it. Just 1 mana sacrifice outlet, same with Viserys here. Instead of putting a counter on it, it gets you scry 1, so a bit of card selection. Goblin Bombardment, it deals 1 damage, we can win the game with this occasionally. Priest of Forgotten Gods, sacrifice 2 creatures. This is less so of a finisher, we can use it just as a value card. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature, so you can choose ourselves if we need to, and then you add 2 black and draw a card. So you draw a card, ramp ourselves, and our opponents are down a creature as well. Woe Strider, 2 mana black, when it enters to make a goat token, we can sacrifice that to Korvold, and it sacrifice another creature, scry 1. This can't sacrifice itself, which is quite sad, but we can escape it later on, exiling 4 other cards from our graveyard, so it comes back over and over again if our sacrifice outlet gets removed. Then we have the 2 cards which they enter, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Plaguecraft is slightly better. I haven't put any more in here because this effect I often find is overrated. But I've got some in here as they do work particularly well. So next up we have ways, because we're sacrificing a lot of creatures, we want ways to benefit off that other than just Korvold drawing us cards. So the first set of cards we have will deal damage to our opponents. Poison Departure, whenever a creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life. It's also 2/3 death type with reach, so people are less likely to attack into us, so we can just block with this and kill whatever they're attacking us with. Vindictive Vampire, 1 damage to each opponent and gain 1 life. It does the same effect, except we gain life as well. Zulaport Cutthroat does the same, he also gains life. And also same with Bastion Remembrance, except that comes with token as well. So Comrade the Grim, all-star in this deck. When a card's put into a graveyard, other than a battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, or a creature dies, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. If we board wipe, we can often kill people with this because it cares about our opponent's stuff as well. Same with Poison Departure. It also cares about if we recur stuff from our graveyard because it leaves. But then again, overall it's just an incredibly powerful card. We also have cards which create tokens or do something else when creatures die. We have Nightmare Shepherd. Whenever a non-token creature dies, you can exile it. If you create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1 Nightmare, in addition to its other types. This one, let's say someone board wipes, we can basically just have the same board we had before, except lacking tokens, of course. Or Dockside Extortionist, if we have no way of recurring at this turn, we know that we can exile it and get even more treasure tokens to cycle for our deck even quicker. Also works with a lot of other stuff as well. Just an incredibly powerful card. Catacomb Sifter, 1 black and a green. When it enters, create a 1/1 colourless Eldrazi token. With sacrifice this creature, add 1/2 mana pool, so it's ramp. Also another disposable creature. Whenever another creature you control dies, sacrifice 1. Bit of card selection there. Sifter of Skulls, 3 and a black. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, put a 1/1 colourless Eldrazi Sun creature token onto the battlefield. Has sacrifice this mana, add a cut list to your mana pool. Same again. It also makes a Scion token. Except this one is whenever another non-token creature controls instead of making one that enters. Okay cards in this deck. So we're going to be killing a lot of creatures. I want to have some way of bringing them back either to the battlefield or to our hand. Persist is a 2/1 of a black sorcery. Turn target non-legendary creature card from your graveyard to battlefield with -1/-1 counter on it. This can convert Deep Forest Hermit and stuff to battlefield. Or Dockside Extortionist. Basically anything you need to get back can be brought back. Same with Victimize. We can bring back 2 damage dealing stuff which people have killed off, as they're often a target at the same time. Dread Return also returns something back from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it has flashback. Probably one of the best recursion spells in this deck. Blood for Bones. It's not as good, but it brings something back to the creature. Brings a creature back to the battlefield and one to your hand for the mere cost of sacrificing a creature. Raminac Excavator, you may play the land cards from your graveyard. This card deck we have lands which sacrifice themselves, fetch lands. We can replay those, or we might sacrifice land with Korvold, and it just reduces the chance of us missing land drops. Underworld Breach, 1 and a red. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. This escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost, plus exiling 3 other cards from your graveyard. We have an next end step, sacrifice it. Over the course of the game, we're going to be filling up our graveyard, and this is a way to use the dead cards in there and get back the gems we have in there, all in one turn. So often we can win with this card. I have never played it personally. If I do get the chance to play it, I reckon it'll be very good. 3 and a black, legendary creature, human cleric. Tap it, sacrifice 2 creatures, return target creature card from graveyard to battlefield. This is repeatable recursion. Same with Liliana, except you have to plus up a couple of times. We only really care about the +1, which is make a zombie and mill 2. Fills up a graveyard, makes a token which should be sacrificed, or -3 recur a creature. And if we do, we have an end up by doing a -7, then we end up doing a -7. Find, return target up to 2 target creature cards to your graveyard to your hand. And then finality, it's a board wipe. We use find more often as it's pretty well costed for 2 mana. And then Skullwinder, if you have an Eternal Witness, put an Eternal Witness in here. I think mine's in my Yidris deck, and I couldn't be bothered to change it. When it enters, return target card from your graveyard to your hand, and then choose an opponent, and the opponent does the same. This card, you can be political with it, where you can't be with Eternal Witness. However, Eternal Witness is just straight up better, because helping out your opponents isn't necessarily always a good thing. Kai's Ghost Form. Enchant creature or painful you control when it dies or is put into exile. Return that card to battlefield under your control. This is just protection. Same with Swiftfoot Boots, Hexproof Haste. Giving our commander haste is also pretty good. Grim Tutor. This is just a random card. If you have Demonic Tutor or Vampiric Tutor, put those in here instead. They will do a much better job. However, this card is fine. 3 mana, such a beautiful card, put into your hand to lose 3 life. If you're missing a Sacrifice Outlet, a damage dealing card, tokens, you can find whatever you need and put it into your hand. Next up, we have 2 board wipes in this deck, other than 1 finality. We have Chain Reaction, 4 mana. It does X damage to each creature, X is number of creatures on the battlefield. If we do need to clean the board, this does a pretty good job at it. It's only 4 mana. And Crux of Fate, destroy non-dragon creatures or destroy all dragon creatures. Our commander is a dragon, of course, so if you choose all non-dragon creatures, he sticks around. And we have a empty board to swing at people with. Next up, we have our land base. This is the sort of deck where having a specific lands will help you out. So County Garden, when it enters taps, and when it enters, you create a 0/1 plant creature token and put it onto battlefield. Play this turn 1, store, keep the plant, and then you can sacrifice it to Korvold. Excellent card in the deck, and it adds taps for a green. Jun Panorama. If you have a fetch land, so pay 1 life, search over for Forest Mountain, put it on the battlefield, put that in here instead. However, I'm poor. I do own a fetch land, but it's red and white, and it's in my own deck. So sacrifice Jun Panorama, search library for basic swamp, mountain, or forest card, put on the battlefield taps, and shuffle your library. This mana fixes you, it's fine. However, it could be better. Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse both do the same thing. Sacrifice a land, sacrifice Evolving Wilds or Terramorphic Expanse. Search for a basic land card, put on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Again, fetch lands, you can be paid again with your Raminac Excavator. Mirrored Landscape, ramp on a land, enters tapped, adds 1 colourless, and 2, sack it. Search for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type, put on the battlefield, tapped, and shuffle your library. Command Tower, taps for any of the colours we need. Gruul Turf taps for red or green and bounces 1 land to our hand. Next we have a Temple. We also have another bounce land. Red, black, red, bounce a land to our hand. Black, green, scry 1 when it enters. Lotus Field, when it enters, sacrifice 2 lands. This will draw us 2 cards of Korvold. And it's got hexproof as well, so it's some points of land destruction spell this. It will not happen. So it's much safer than playing Lotus Veil. Mosswort Bridge and Spinebrook Knoll. These both hide away a card from among the top 4, and then you cast it when you meet the requirement. So this is total power of 10 or greater creatures, which is pretty easy, or deal 7 or manage to damage an opponent this turn, which is also quite easy. So you just get to cast 3 spells on lands. Exotic Orchard most of the time taps for our colours. Then we have 4 mountains, because that's our least used colour. 9 swamps, as that's our second amount, and 10 forests. We want more forest green sources and everything else as our ramps green, meaning we can play our green lands early in the game and always know we can play our ramp spells. So this deck is overall pretty fun. You get to do a lot of sacrificing. It's not quite as complicated as an artifact recursion deck, which I find are some of the hardest to play. However, it does require quite a lot of logical thinking to plan ahead your turns, work out what you're going to sacrifice and when, whether you're going to leave it till next turn. You need to do maths to work out whether you can kill your opponents or not a lot of the time. So if you do enjoy that sort of deck, Korvold is definitely a good commander to choose. I think that'll be all today. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.